now.
Welcome to Burnt Out. The Burnt Out podcast shares the stories of firefighters, emergency personnel, and other first responders around the world to create a pathway to save lives. The stories you will hear are real and may be disturbing to some listeners. Listener discretion is advised. And now I'd like to introduce you to your hosts for Burnt Out, Skip O and Jeff the Old Guy.
Welcome to Burnout Podcast. I'm Jeff, your host. Skip O is on assignment this week as he makes preparations for our upcoming Fire Department Instructors Conference in Indiana. It's going to be held April 25th through 29th. You can find us on the floor. I believe it's booth 8612. Come by and see us there. If you'd like to see our sponsors today, please visit our webpage at www.burnoutpodcast.org. You'll see a list of our sponsors on there, and along with numerous numbers and ways to reach out for help if you or a loved one or even a friend are looking for answers. Today we have Richard Gallegos with us from Orlando, Florida. Good afternoon, Richard. How are you?
I'm doing well, Jeff. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. So we've got a lot to talk about today. Tell me a little bit about yourself and your background and what brought you to where you are today.
Okay. So, like you said, I'm located in Orlando. I was born and raised here pretty much my entire life. Right after high school, I got into the EMS service, became a paramedic and a critical care paramedic, went on to become a flight medic, spent about 10 years in the EMS service. And from there, I stepped into the role as the lead intake coordinator for the IAFF Center of Excellence, which I've done for the past almost 6 years now. Along my journey as a medic, I struggled very hard with mental health issues, including PTSD, depression, anxiety. It devolved to the point to where, it started having those life-threatening, intrusive thoughts, and, used alcohol and substances, pretty much anything I could to make myself feel numb. I just wanted to feel different. And, after coming, really close to losing everything, including my own life, I decided I needed to make a change and, found the help that I needed, talked to, therapist after therapist until I found the right one. Had a very supportive wife the entire time. She was my catalyst for finally hitting rock bottom. It was the threat of losing her. I'd been with her since we were 15 years old. We'd never broken up. As of today, I have a 13-year-old daughter. She was very, very young at the time. And I knew that if I didn't make a change, I probably wouldn't have been here today.
You said that your wife was very supportive on that. Did she tell you, did she recognize problems with you, or did you notice it yourself?
Oh, no. Everyone around me knew. I felt like I was the last one to know. Everybody around me, I thought I was keeping up this, this persona, this mask. But everyone who knew me, more than just a casual acquaintance, knew that I was struggling hard. It got to the point to where I was abusing IV opiates. I was shooting up probably 5 to 6 times a day. I was eating pills like they were, M&Ms. Anything that I could abuse, I was. Benadryl, all kinds of cough medicines, over-the-counter stuff. I just didn't want to feel like me. And then the alcohol started, and I got up to drinking about a fifth of whiskey a day was about where I leveled off on my days off. Obviously, I wasn't drinking like that on shift, but on my days off, it was at least a fifth a day. And my wife had been pleading with me for years to get help and, to admit that I had a problem. And, the arrogance of addiction, that borderline narcissism that you have, that you can manipulate and convince everyone around you. And I knew for me, I could shut that conversation down immediately if I would just explode, right? Well, if he's that passionate about it, he must really not have a problem. That was my logic. But, looking back on it, there were so many cries for me to get help. And it wasn't until she finally told me that she didn't think that she could stay in this marriage anymore, which that was one of the hardest conversations I had ever had. It was the day after Christmas that I ruined, completely ruined. And I was face down in the toilet, just puking my brains up. And she came in, it was about 6 o'clock in the morning. And she came in and sat down on the edge of our tub. And she just told me she wasn't angry. She wasn't upset. It was the most sincere I have ever seen anybody in their life. And she told me that she can't continue like this, and that I was going to lose her and my daughter. And that was it. That was it for me. After that conversation, I got I was on the phone within a couple hours, getting help, finding AA meetings, finding anything that I could, anything that I could cling to until I could get into treatment. And I'm proud to say I've been sober ever since.
Outstanding. I got to ask you this, because this is a thing that I went through too. How hard was it to make that confession to yourself? Yeah, I do have a problem. I need to get help. I know your wife was really supportive of it, and I do applaud her for that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But you had to make that transition from I'm okay to I'm screwed up.
Yeah.
And how was that? How did you do that?
I think deep down I knew that I had a problem. I was always terrified that I didn't know where my next drink or my next high was going to come from. That and for probably a year to a year and a half, I battled with that internally, but I was able to keep that little voice quiet. It's like my wife was the microphone to my own voice. Once I realized that, once that realization hit that everyone around me knew, it was a lot easier for me to make that decision or make that declaration. But that was the hardest realization that I've ever had to come to in my life, hands down. To say it out loud, to say I have a problem, I need help. That was the most weightiest statement I've ever made in my life.
It's scary.
It's terrifying.
Yeah.
And then picking up that phone and calling complete strangers. I tell you, I used to tell all my guys when I would talk to them when I worked for the Center of Excellence, that phone weighs 1,000 pounds. It's the hardest conversation you'll ever have, especially opening up to a complete stranger.
I know. I think we spoke before in the COE. So tell me a little bit about that. You were an intake caller, is that correct?
Yep. So basically, I was over the team. I managed the team that oversaw all the intake for the Center of Excellence. So on my last day, I want to say we were at 2,200 and roughly 50 patients admitted to the Center of Excellence. And it was, I would say that I've spoken to probably 92 to 95% of all of them.
Wow.
I've talked, that's all my days were just talking to our brothers and sisters that needed help, that were struggling with that same realization, that were struggling with that 1,000-pound phone. And some of the stories that I've heard have been absolutely heart-wrenching. The strength and courage of the people in the fire EMS field, it rivals no one. I mean, some of the stories and talking to some of the wives, because I spoke to, spouses almost as much as I spoke to patients, and to hear what people had the perseverance to go through, and that were still strong enough to pick up that phone and make that call and make that decision to get help. It's a testament to just the cumulative strength that we have.
So how did that affect you hearing these people talk about the same thing that you're going through?
At first, it started off very, very therapeutic, very therapeutic. But towards the end, it was almost like, somebody would call in and they would tell me about, a PEDS code that they went on. And, automatically it would, boom, put me right back in, a couple of the ones that I ran. And I started realizing that things that I had dealt with and I had processed, I was starting to question, whether or not I had actually dealt with them. and I was starting to relive the trauma, and then the nightmares were coming back. And, I was starting to have anxiety and depression on behalf of my patients. When I spoke to my therapist, it was called vicarious trauma exposure.
Okay.
And a lot of actual therapists deal with this, and it starts to weigh very heavily. So I knew that I needed to make some changes. My heart, my absolute heart is for people in our field to get the help they need, hands down. But having that type of exposure was just too much volume for me. And I had to make the decision to step away. And now I'm trying to focus my passion for helping our brothers and sisters in different ways. Um, I ended up writing a book in regards to recovery. And, my goals down the line are to start my own 501c that helps with firefighters, medics, and EMTs getting the help that they need who maybe not be able to afford it financially. So, there's a few plans that I have that I want to implement within the next 5 to 10 years that hopefully will allow me to pour back into this demographic that has touched me so deeply.
I want to know more about your book. Tell me about your book. What's the name of it? Where can I get it at? And
Okay.
don't tell me the inside of it though, but I want to hear this inspiration to write a book. That's impressive. That is impressive.
So the book is called Recovery Run. I wrote it back in 2020, and it's basically talks about what fire and EMS guys go through, like what we deal with in our field. It can be a very triggering book. I am very, very raw and honest with what scenes are like, describing scenes and processes that we go through. And I really try to put the reader in the mindset of what it's like to deal with things like that. The aftershock of those things, swallowing it, not talking about it, and the cumulative effect that it has on you after a while. And then I, obviously segue into my substance abuse and trying to use that to numb myself to deal with these issues. And then, the book gets pretty heavy at times. There's parts in it that I read and I absolutely can't stand the person I was at that point.
I was just getting ready to ask you this
Yeah.
question. How hard was it to write about you and your other life that you had?
Whew.
That had to take a lot of reaching in and pulling out that soul.
Yeah. So I liken my addiction to a mistress, and I kind of relate it to like almost cheating on my wife. And it's one of those things that it goes from being a mistress to almost a religion for me. And I told my wife when I wrote it, said, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it the right way. I'm not going to try to protect my reputation, my name. If I'm going to be honest, I'm going to be brutally honest, not only with my readers, but with myself. And there's parts of this book that just turn my stomach. Being on scene with, a suicide victim, and, all I can think of is, God, can we leave here? I need to get high. Like just that self-absorbed, self-driven mindset. And then as the book progresses, I talk about using ultramarathons as a form of perseverance, electing to put yourself in a struggle and forcing yourself to persevere in order to overcome, what seems like insurmountable obstacles. So the peak of the book is my participation in a 100-mile ultramarathon. And then, just kind of uses it as a metaphor of the road that we travel. And, there's so many times that we feel like we should just give up, or that the goal is just insurmountable and it's non-obtainable. And the whole point that I want to impart is you can get to any finish line you set for yourself as long as you just continue to put one foot in front of the other. Take it in small strides, small steps at a time, and don't focus on where you're going, focus on where you are currently and taking that next little step.
So set your benchmarks low and expect high results. All right. Is that why you run?
It is. Yeah, I was about 300 pounds a couple years into my sobriety, and I felt like I was just white knuckling, and I felt like there at some point there was going to be this little bit of stress that was just going to throw me back into my old ways. And I was at the beach on vacation with my wife, daughter, and my mom, and I had went upstairs to take a nap, and I got on YouTube as one does, started going down the rabbit hole, and I ended up listening to this podcast of this ex-Navy SEAL, and he was talking about the hardest thing he's ever done.
I think I know this book.
David Goggins.
Yes, I read it and I listened to the audiobook. You Can't Hurt Me. Yes, it's excellent.
So I was listening to his Joe Rogan podcast, and he's sitting here telling Joe about, being at mile 70, and it's the worst pain he's ever been in, and he's lost control of his bowel movements, and he's urinating blood and he's seeing things. And he said that he'd been through 3 hell weeks in Navy SEAL school, but this was by far the hardest thing he's ever done in his life. And I was like, I want to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I want to give that a shot.
I like where you're at. Yeah, I do like that.
I walked down the stairs, probably got winded walking down the stairs, went out to the pool and told my wife, I said, I think I'm going to run 100 miles. And they just lost it. I mean, that's the reaction I should have received, right? So I told her, I said, no, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. And, having just found out that it was even possible, 10 minutes earlier.
Right.
So, thank God for the Dunning-Kruger effect. I was so stupid about the topic, I thought I knew something about it. But 2 weeks later, I ended up signing up for the Keys 100. And, without going too far into the book, I ended up training for 10 months and lost 100 pounds in that 10 months, and found myself at the starting line and fighting my way through that race.
Wow. That's good. That is good. I like that. 100 pounds, 10 months, dude. I know people are like, how'd you do it, man? How'd you do it? I know that question goes a lot, man.
Yeah. And it's really, really just simple. Just stay consistent, both in what you eat. And, I would eat chicken and proteins until I was so bored of chickens and vegetables, but it worked. And I just,
they all start tasting the same.
Yeah. Oh my God. and that's the thing. If it all tastes the same, just get it down.
Right. That's all I need to fill that void, and I'm good.
Yep.
Yeah. I've been laid up since August of 2020 with the injury from work, and I gained some weight there. I was like 262, and I didn't like it. I was sitting around, got my knee replaced, and I said I got to lose some of this weight. So I'm just sitting around doing nothing because it repaired, and I dropped 40 pounds, and I love it. And I want to do maybe 5 more, and I'll stop at that.
Yeah.
Because it's a good weight, but I was carrying a lot. But it feels good to drop that. It really does. It's hard. And it's like, just like recovery, you got to stay with it and stay on it, or it'll definitely take advantage of you. So where can I get your book at?
So it was published through Olympia Publishing. You can buy it off their website. They're a London house publisher, but it's also available stateside on Amazon. Barnes and Noble is a national distributor. Walmart is a national distributor. The Book Depository. Then there's a few more. I even found it on an Italian website and a Hungarian website, because it was released in North America and the UK.
That's awesome.
So, yep. If you just even Google my first and last name, it will give you all the links here stateside to where the book can be bought.
And your first name's Richard. Go ahead and spell your last name for us.
That's Gallegos.
There you go. And it's pronounced Gallegos.
That's it.
I learned that today.
Yeah.
There's no I in there, but it's definitely good. I wrote it down. I told you I wrote it down. It definitely works, man. Hooked on phonics, man. Yes, sir. So you've actually done something totally different than what most people would do. You've done a lot with recovery. You've done a lot with the running. You've written a book, and you started a new business.
Yeah.
What is this new business you started?
So I've just made the the decision to step into something that I love doing. And ever since I bought my first car, I've always loved auto detailing. So I decided I opened up my own business. It's called Rescue and Recovered. A lot of people who find out where I get the name from, love that premise. All of my, it's, I don't want to say cliche, but all of my services are based around EMS work. So like my packages are code 1, 2, 3, and 4. Then you have the heart stopper. So it's just something I get to have fun with now. And I get to, really do something that I enjoy doing. It kind of helps. It's almost therapeutic in a way. It's almost like having a hobby that you love doing and gets your mind off the world. And it's been very, very successful for me so far. So my end goal, my goal is to be able to make enough to where I can start a 501c. I want to start a ultra marathoning race brand here in Central Florida that puts on 100-mile races. And then I want all of the proceeds of that to go to scholarships for my brothers and sisters to get help. So the company's name is Burning Soul Ultras. And as soon as I'm able to get that up and launched, that's where my heart is. That's where I want to be. That's where I want to live. I want to take my two passions, ultra running and mental health help advocacy for my fire EMS, and put those two together. And I don't think I I think you would be hard pressed to find a better metaphor for the crap that we deal with than 100-miler. I mean, you can be at mile 60, halfway through your career, and be completely exhausted and completely burnt out and feel like there's no way you can keep moving forward. That's how I feel during those runs.
Mm-hmm.
But by mile 70, your entire outlook can change. You can be doing a 45-minute mile between mile 65 and 70. Then you get to mile 72, and now you're back to running a 10-minute mile. And I think that that's the biggest metaphor for, people in the fire EMS service. You can be burnt out at a very, very young place in your career and think that it doesn't get any better than this, but it does.
Yeah.
If you just keep on with that perseverance. I've talked to so many salty, 15, 16-year-old or year-long veterans, and they tell me, I'm quitting, I'm done, I'm out of here, I can't do this anymore. And I'm like, well, why don't we make that decision not under distress? If you're going to make that decision, make it from a place to where you're there mentally. Go get the help, take a break, step away for a second, focus on you. And then if you decide that it's still right for you to step away, then do it. Don't let anybody bully you out of your identity, because this job is more than just a job for us. It's an identity.
Yeah, absolutely.
When you say you're a firefighter, when you say you're a medic or an EMT, to anybody in the community, those titles come with a certain set of traits that the community expects of you and gives you. And we find our identity in that. Don't let anybody bully you out of your identity. Get the help you need, be bold. And then, if you still think it's right for you to step away, do so. But at least you've made the decision and your hand wasn't forced.
Okay. So I'm going to capitalize on that right there. What's your involvement with stigma? Have you seen a lot of that?
Oh, absolutely. That was the premise on which I built all of my talks to. Every person I talked to, I think I mentioned the word stigma, because that was the hardest thing for me to overcome.
Mm-hmm. And it's still here, very, very present. It is very present out here today. How do you deal with that?
So I would rather go against stigma than become a statistic, right? That's what stigma leads into, is statistics. There's a reason why our burnout rate, our suicide rate, our depression rate, our divorce rate, everything in our field is so astronomically high compared to other fields. And it's that stigma, I believe, is the most detrimental thing in our field. I don't think it's anything else but the mindset that if you ask for help, you're weak or you don't belong here. That is absolutely erroneous. I can't think of a person And if I can, I don't want to know the person that a screaming mother can hand a limp child to, push them into your arms. If that doesn't take a little part of your soul
Mm-hmm.
or who you are, then you're either a sociopath or you're a robot.
Right.
And it's an unfair expectation that we put on ourselves to think because we have a patch on our right shoulder that we shouldn't be impacted by things like that. I learned a lot in medic school, a lot. I never learned how to deal with the aftermath.
It's funny you say that. I just did my research for National Registry. I wasn't going to give my paramedic up because I haven't seen it all. I've seen enough. But I decided to go ahead and get recertified and make my decision in the next 2 years. If you would put some words out here to the people listening like that know of people or people are listening here that have the stigma of mental health issues, what would you tell them? What would you absolutely tell them?
The question that I would ask is, are you happy? If you're not happy, nothing else matters in your life. However you choose to define happy, that's all that matters. Typically people in our field are pretty outspoken. We have to be. So what I would always do is I would ask, are you happy? Well, no, I'm not happy. That's why I'm talking to you. Okay. All right. So what means more to you? Becoming happy and being at peace with who you are, or wearing a mask that makes other people, fly under other people's radar,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because that's basically all it is, right? Because the stigma doesn't bring any added respect, right? This stigma doesn't, just because you don't talk about your problems, that doesn't bring you added respect, right? That just kind of lets you fly under everyone's radar. When in reality, I can't think of a firefighter or EMS worker in this country that wouldn't be served well by talking to somebody. We've all dealt with it. We've all dealt with the codes, the PD codes, the trauma alerts, the trauma codes, hell, just the burnout calls.
Right.
I mean, how many times have you woken up at 2:00 in the morning to go to, a toothache times 3 days, and you're just grabbing your tough book and you're just, you better be dying. That
Yeah.
tooth better be halfway to your brain. Yeah.
I remember having to go to my captain's office after one of those toothache calls. Yeah, I
Uh-huh.
do remember.
Yep.
It wasn't my fault, man.
So we all deal with the same stuff, and that's one thing I learned talking to, thousands of firefighters across the country. It's all the same. It's all the same issues. It's just wrapped differently. There's no difference of a PEDS call down here in Florida than what it looks like in Alaska or Hawaii
Right.
or Maine, right? And
Right.
everywhere in between. We all deal with the same stuff. And to allow yourself to think that you're the only one, I really think that that's a lack of logic. And that's the nature of PTSD, of depression, of anxiety, is to make you feel isolated. There's a part, and especially when you mix in stigma, you get this self-loathing. You feel like
Mhm.
you're the only one, or you're the weak one, you're the weakest link. But if you speak up, you're even weaker, or you're going to be found out as being this fraud. When in reality, your partner, your engineer, your captain, your lieutenant, all these people are probably struggling with the exact same thing.
So, with that being said, how would you tell somebody who's struggling with depression now, or they don't know which way to go? They're in deep. They're in that rabbit hole.
Mm-hmm.
What would you tell them? And I know you've done this with over 2,000.
Yep.
So many people.
Find a person that you trust. Find a person that you respect, and talk to them. You don't have to have the right words. You just have to have words. The simple statement of, I'm not happy, and I don't know what to do, and I don't know why I'm not happy.
There you go.
Just those statements. People can start, pointing you in the right direction. A therapist can start helping you detangle those thoughts. But just being bold and courageous enough to admit to yourself and say out loud that you're not happy, that you want to be, and that you need help.
There you go. Now, with that in mind, during April in Indianapolis, Indiana, we're going to be at the Fire Department Instructors Conference. I believe it's booth 8612. I hope I'm not wrong on that one. But you can look us up at the Worldwide Peer Support or burnoutpodcast.org and find out where our booth is. We're going to be there the 25th through the 29th on the, like I said, booth number 8612. So stop on my CS too. Also, go to the burnoutpodcast.org page or worldwide peer support page. You can search those pages, look for any links you may find interesting, just to maybe you want to educate yourself or even check yourself out. Would probably be a good idea. And you click it in those links. We have numbers on there available for you for 24 hours, 7 days a week, Monday through Friday, including holidays. So, Richard, I want to thank you very much for spending your time with us today. It's beautiful out there in Florida. I can see that in the background you had there. Kind of jealous. But today in Maryland, the one day at a 365, it's actually 75 and sunny out here, so I can't complain. Do you have a closing note you want to say, a closing quote or anything?
If you're struggling out there, you're not alone. I sincerely mean that. There is help out there. There is peace on the other side. Just do some soul searching and speak up. That's how we're going to change everything. That's how we're going to change our culture, speaking up.
So what you said today, I'm going to take a put on this and close this out with is, if you're not happy, you're not going to make other people happy. And if you don't know why you're happy, and you even have a 1% inclination that it may be due to the job or PTSD, make that call. Make that phone call. All right? Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it, man. And I'm going to look for your book on Amazon, Recovery Run, and I'm probably going to buy that bad boy myself.
And the full title to it is Recovery Run, One Man's Journey from Rock Bottom to Ultramarathon.
All right, Richard. Thank you very much. And I want to thank everybody for tuning in and listening to the Burnout Podcast.
Thank you for listening to Burnout. Burnout is brought to you by the Worldwide Peer Support. You can visit Burnout Podcast at burntoutpodcast.org or visit Worldwide Peer Support at worldwidepeersupport.org. Your hosts for the Burnt Out Podcast are Skip O and Jeff the Old Guy. Produced by Sean P. Neal. A MyPodcast.media production.